Hello everyone, my name is Maria Marcano Olivier and today we're going to be discussing how to write an argumentative essay at university level. So, before we get started, I just want to make sure that you've watched the prequel to this session called Embedding Literature into Writing. This gives a foundation for when you need to find literature to support what you're saying, and examples of where you can find this literature and how you can identify the literature quality. So please do watch this before you watch today's session. In this session, we'll review what is an argumentative essay. We'll discuss the essay writing process from preparation to submission, and we'll outline an ideal essay structure. So, let's start with what is an argumentative essay. An argumentative essay is a form of written communication presenting an argument. You're trying to persuade the audience to side with you, so you present an argument to them, and you're trying to convince them through the essay that your perspective is the perspective that they should adopt themselves. However, rather than simply presenting all of the evidence that supports you, you must present evidence from both sides of the argument. You can't just focus on your side of the argument and act like there's no evidence for the other side. That's not a fair argument. You can't present all supporting evidence and no counter-argument, as this would be biased, and in academic writing, we try and ensure that our writing is as unbiased as possible. Therefore, you must methodically analyse both sides of the argument before drawing to the conclusion that your perspective is the best supported side of the argument. Writing an argumentative essay is a really great skill to have, and the process of writing an academic essay gives you other skills that are really important in academia and probably in your future work as well. For example, writing an argumentative essay gives you the opportunity to find evidence to support your argument and a balanced counter-argument, and this can help you develop your critical and analytical skills. For example, you might find evidence that supports your argument very well, but then when you look at that evidence, you might find it's not very good quality. So you want to critique your own argument and the quality of the evidence that you present. It will also help you to identify high-quality literature from poor-quality literature. Critically analysing the literature is one aspect of this, but other aspects of it include where the literature was published and who it was published by. So identifying these key characteristics of quality literature is a good skill, and I go over this a little bit more in the prequel to this session, embedding academic literature into writing. And finally, practicing argumentative skills is going to be good for your future career, as this is a transferable skill. It's really important to be able to present a balanced argument, whether that's in writing or verbally. Your future bosses will find this a really good skill because they want people that work for them to be able to present to them good ideas and understand that those ideas are balanced. They don't simply want people to agree with them or to present their own ideas without considering all aspects and different perspectives. So being able to show that you have this ability to demonstrate a balanced argument can be really useful for your future career. So now that we know what an argumentative essay is, let's consider the stages of writing an essay. First, you have to plan your essay. Consider what your argument is going to be, and plan how you're going to structure your essay around that argument. Next, you have drafting. So perhaps write a few more elaborate plans rather than just a skeleton plan. Consider what information you're going to put in those paragraphs specifically. Have a think about different ways that you can present this information, what order you want to present the information, and the most logical way to do this, and try a few different drafts to see which one is the best for you. Next, we have actually writing the essay. So once you've identified the best draft, the best logical flow of information, you're going to need to write your essay. Now, in doing this, Make sure that you find some really good academic literature to support your argument and your counter-argument. Make sure that you critique this literature where appropriate, and make sure that your writing is of a high academic style. This includes appropriate paragraphing, punctuation, and spelling. Once you have a full essay, your sort of final draft of your essay, you're going to want to review this. So read a couple of times over and over again. Perhaps leave the essay and come back to it and read it again a couple of days later with fresh eyes to see if there's anything that you haven't noticed. Perhaps swap your essay with someone else and see if they can identify anywhere that your essay can be improved. And once you've identified this, you're going to want to edit your essay. Make sure that any places that you can improve are improved, and if your friends have had a look at your essay and have identified ways that they think your essay could be improved, make sure that you take that on board as well, because sometimes when you're writing an essay, it can make perfect sense to you as the author, but you need to make sure that it makes sense to other people as well. Once you've edited, you can submit. So at BCU, we have an online submission system, so there's no paper submissions. Make sure that you've submitted, double check you've submitted it to the right portal, and make sure that the submission has been successful. We don't want to come to the date of release and find out that your submission didn't actually go through properly because of some kind of internet issue, in which case you would unfortunately receive a 0 for the assignment if you didn't submit it. So you really do need to make sure that no technical issues get in the way of you getting the best grade you can get. And now we're on to preparation. First, you must choose your essay question. Sometimes you're given the option to choose one of multiple essay questions, or other times you might be allocated a specific essay question. In any case, it's very important that you understand the essay question. If anything is unclear to you, then please make sure that you confirm this with your lecturer, either in person or perhaps by posting on one of the Moodle forums, just to make sure that you completely understand it. I have a friend who studied agriculture, and one of her essay questions was on mobile farming and how she would create a mobile farming environment. Now, she wrote a fantastic and well-supported essay on creating a mobile farming app to teach children about farming. However, what the lecturer meant was mobile farms where they can travel from one place to another, like mini mobile petting zoos. So while she wrote a fantastic essay, she did fail that assignment because she didn't understand the question properly. So it's very important to make sure that you understand the question, because unfortunately, if you write a very good essay but you don't meet the learning criteria, we can only give you a fail mark. So really do make sure that you understand everything about the essay question. So let's say we're creating an essay around the question, does social media have a negative impact on students' body image? Well, first you'd read up on the key arguments associated with this question and pick a side. It might be best for you to have a look at standard literature, so not necessarily academic literature, and see what the opinion of the general public is about this question. Once you've got to grips with the basics of the argument, have a look around Google Scholar and other academic search engines for other articles that support or contradict your argument. So for peer-reviewed literature, studies and meta-analyses that either support or contradict your point of view. In general, we expect you to avoid poor literature in academic writing, and I go over selecting good quality literature in my session Embedding Academic Literature into Writing. However, there are some circumstances where you might use poorer literature. And this is where, if you are struggling to find good quality literature to support or contradict your argument, you might want to use some poor literature. However, do make sure that you critique this literature. You won't be marked down for using poor literature in your essay, as long as you do address the fact that it's poor literature. If you do this, you're not only showing that you have done a thorough search of the literature to support or contradict this argument, but you're also showing your critical analysis skills. So sometimes using poor literature isn't the worst thing, because you're able to show that you can identify where literature is useful and where it's not necessarily useful, but it's masquerading as useful. And if you can call the literature out on that, then that does show some high academic skill. Now that you've read through the literature, you need to make sure that you're careful of maintaining the reference list of the literature that you want to reference in your essay as you go along. You don't want to find a really good reference or a really good study only to realise you can't find it later down the line. Or you don't want to actually write about a really good study only to then realise that you haven't referenced it in your essay and again can't find it, because we don't want you to include information about research if you're not able to back this up by showing us where you found this information. So you need to make sure that you're maintaining a thorough reference list. Now, there is another video discussing how you reference, so I'm not going to cover this now because I think you should watch that one instead. However, this is the information that you need to make sure that you make a note of when you're creating your reference list. First, you need to have the author or authors of the piece, the title, which includes the chapter title and the book title, or the article title and the journal title, including the web page and URL if it's an online article that doesn't have a DOI number. Any editors, if this is relevant, for example, if you are taking your reference from a book. The date of this reference, so the year that it was published. And any page numbers of articles or chapters from where you might take direct quotations. So make sure that you have all of this information written down, or perhaps you might want to just have a Word document open where you copy and paste the URLs of the studies that you're looking at for future reference. In any case, you do need to make sure that you can keep a list of the studies that you're referring to. Otherwise, you will be marked down for this if we notice that the studies that you're talking about in your essay are not cited or referenced in your reference list. Now that we've got to grips with what we want to discuss and what our argument is and the counter-argument, we should start to plan the essay structure. So, with an essay, your first paragraph should introduce the topic. The main body of your essay should explain your argument and counter-arguments, and the final paragraph should conclude your argument, using evidence from the main body of your essay to justify why you have reached the conclusion that you have. So, your essay structure will look a little bit like this, and I'll go into this in a bit more detail. So, this is your introduction paragraph. You want to start with a broad hook to capture the attention of your audience. Now, this will be very broad. So, for example, if your argument is the essay title we discussed earlier of "Does social media have a negative impact on students' body image?", you might start by simply stating what social media is. So you'll discuss what social media is, you'll define it and you'll give examples, and then you'll move on to defining what body image is. So this is introducing the topic. You then discuss the wider literature about this, for example, that social media presents a glorified perspective of people's lives, and then you might discuss how this has been found to possibly have a negative impact on people's mental health. This will then lead you nicely towards your core argument. that it might therefore have an impact on people's body image. Finally, you present your thesis statement, your main point. So, does social media have a negative influence on people's body image? And that will be the plan of your first introductory paragraph. So again, we start broad, we discuss and introduce the topic, and we slowly work towards the final thesis point. This paragraph is generally around half to 3/4 of a page long. So whilst we're expecting you to cover a few different points, you need to make sure that your writing is concise, because we don't want your introduction to be 3 pages long. Next, we move on to the main body of your essay. Each paragraph of the main body of your essay should discuss one piece of evidence or one point for your argument. So, for example, the first paragraph of your main body might be discussing how younger children, so younger teenagers, have reported lower reported body image after experiencing a lot of time on social media. And you might draw this towards the argument that if this affects younger children, it might affect students in an even greater way. That paragraph should then flow logically into the next, which might be your counter-argument. For example, you might say that just because social media influences the body image of younger teenagers, that it wouldn't necessarily influence the body image of students, because students are older, they're perhaps more reasonable, they can consider things from different perspectives, whereas children are more insular and consider mainly just themselves. So you can see how we make one point and then we make a counterpoint that flows between them. Don't forget to also present your counter-arguments. So you might want to present several paragraphs of supporting argument and then several paragraphs of counter-argument, rather than doing one after the other and alternating. It's totally up to you, and it depends how this argument flows logically. Do try and make sure that the counter-argument isn't necessarily stronger than your actual argument, but don't present biased literature. So don't ignore the positive literature for your counter-arguments. Instead, make sure that you select very high-quality literature, but that if there are ways to critique this literature, that you present that as well, so that you can ensure that the counter-argument isn't as strong as the main argument, even though you've constructed it as fairly as possible. Finally, we have our concluding paragraph. So in this paragraph, you restate your thesis statement, so does social media have a negative influence on students' body image, and provide an overview of the main points. You don't introduce new evidence or ideas in this paragraph, and you don't present personal views. Now, I know that I've said that you should present your idea, your argument, but you shouldn't use words like I or me or my. You should write this in the third person and make this seem as unbiased as possible. So you state that the literature shows this, or evidence points towards this. You don't say, I think this because of this. But again, you also shouldn't introduce new evidence or ideas. This paragraph should be a summary of what you've already discussed, highlighting the fact that your argument, so your perspective, is the most well supported. And then you finally finish with a concluding statement, such as, the evidence indicates that social media has a negative influence on students' body image, and more research is required to identify where we can support students in their body image to promote their mental health, something like that. So a concluding statement saying what you found in your essay and how you might apply this knowledge to the future. So, that's all from me for today. I hope that you found this useful as a good overall view of writing an argumentative essay. And I look forward to seeing you in September. Bye for now.